everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the BSOC Bulletin podcast by the UNSW Business Society. I'm Adrian, and this week we are going to be talking with Karrie Chen. Karrie has some experience in tax advisory at EY, as well as consulting for Adaptivate and Deloitte. Alongside this, Karrie also studies commerce with a double major in accounting and information systems. What have you been up to recently, Karrie?
I've been taking it chill recently, I'd say. I've kind of been doing uni backwards. So I did a lot of activities in first year. I was working full time, and then I kind of transitioned into part-time work. And right now I'm just taking things chill, enjoying my final year of uni before I jump into full-time work next year.
I guess going more into chronological order of your uni journey to professional experience, what is one of your favorite memories or one of the most profound or distinct things that you did at uni?
The most profound experiences I've had, they're probably related to the Business Society, which I was part of for 3 years, quite an extensive period of time. Potentially, I would say first year, the first road trip I had with my subcom was a really great memory. And yeah, I've met a whole bunch of really great people through that experience as well.
Yeah, sounds super great. I think going more into your participation in societies, did you ever have any experience with case competitions and other competitions like that?
In terms of case competitions, I did my first case comp in first year when I, like most people, had no idea what I had signed myself up for. It was just a bunch of friends who, so I had a really close mate who had a few other people they wanted to do a comp with, and they needed another person. So I kind of got roped into it, had no idea what was going on, and did my first case comp. And in first year, I probably did 5 case comps and failed terribly each time. But yeah, it was a fun learning experience. And then in second year, I ended up joining a consulting specific society, the UNSW Consulting Club, where I started to learn more skills and develop more knowledge specific to case competitions in particular.
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, 5 case comps in first year, that's quite an achievement. I did do case comps myself in first year, but not as many as that. In
hindsight, I would say pursue quality over quantity. But when you're in first year, I think you have a drive, and you're young, you kind of I have a lot of time in my hand. I just want to try a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I think diving more into the consulting that you do for work, how relevant did you find, the skills that you developed in the case competitions?
They were very helpful, particularly more so your technical, or some technical elements, but also just your ability to kind of brainstorm and develop ideas. So I think with consulting, and especially at work, what was really important is being able to interpret and analyze a concept or a question and develop your own thinking about it, and being able to question, what you've developed in order to achieve the best solution. So I think that has the ability to kind of really critically analyze your own work has been super helpful in my career in terms of actual commercial consulting. It's been really helpful. And also just your technical foundations that you develop through participating in case competitions has also been really helpful. So that's just, being able to use PowerPoint, being able to design pretty slides or know what a good slide should look like. That's been really helpful. And yeah, it's just basic exposure to a lot of elements of consulting the case competition process provides you with, and kind of developing a conceptual idea of what kind of skills and knowledge is required has been helpful in my career.
On the topic of skills, what do you think are some key traits or skills that someone looking to pursue consulting should develop or work on, I guess?
I think the most important skill when it comes to working with other people in any sort of career, or even in university, is being empathetic and being able to really listen to other people, because consulting at the end of the day is really a career where you're trying to provide a strategy or solutions to help another person's problems. And sometimes they don't even know what the problem is themselves. So to identify the problem, you really have to listen to what they're saying and try identifying the problem itself, and then kind of working along with the client or working along with the individual to come up with a solution that best suits them. So being able to listen and being empathetic is a really important skill in consulting.
Yeah, I think also on that note, like you mentioned when you kind of talked about the point of consulting and what it is, I think a lot of students, especially me, my first impression was that consulting only occurs in big four firms, or that notion of it being very professional. But I think looking back on it, and even now, consulting can range from a variety of professions and industries. It's not just in business. For example, if you're freelancing or you're an independent contractor, you're also consulting someone about their issue, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess the difference is even if you look at Big Four and you search consulting up, there's so many different roles. There's, there's the strategy consulting streams, there's all the technical consulting streams, HR consulting. So you find that consulting is kind of tagged onto a lot of different roles, and that just indicates how diverse a career in consulting can be, and how important of a skill it is for not just people who are working in consulting specifically, but just in general.
On the note of scale of consulting firms, so you have had experience in a mix of both, correct? With Adaptivate and also Deloitte?
Yeah, so Deloitte, as people would know, is a bigger kind of branding. And then Adaptivate, it's a kind of scale-up firm. So it's a relatively young kind of startup firm that specializes in a element of consulting, which is agile consulting. And it was based in Sydney, but it does have a few offices around the world as well.
Yeah, I think for context, for audience members that might not know the different types of consulting that are out there, you did mention strategies consulting and the different styles. I guess from your perspective, are you able to give a general overview of the different types of consulting that people can get involved with?
I guess when people do case comps and they talk about, I want to do consulting, or I'm consulting, and it's very interesting. Case competitions are really interesting. I'm interested in the career in consulting. They're mainly talking about strategy consulting. So that's primarily in your career as a strategy consultant, you're going into a firm and the problems you're working on are generally provided by C-suite level individuals in your client firms, and they're looking to solve problems related to say what's my 5-year strategy? How do I reduce costs? How do I increase profit? How do I enter a new market? Should I enter a new market? So it's more of those wider firm related queries they ask, and what you're trying to provide solutions for. So that's predominantly what strategy consultants do. So that's a very big generalization as well. I'm not an expert in this, as a disclaimer. So kind of take what I've said in this podcast with a grain of salt and do your own research if you're interested in consulting. But yeah, so that's my interpretation of what strategy consultants predominantly do. And then, as I mentioned, there's heaps of consulting out there. So say for Deloitte, they have digital consulting or digital strategy consulting, where they consult firms on what their digital strategy is, how they want to, update their websites or etc. to provide more user-friendly experiences. There's HR consulting, where you're kind of consulting firms about how, you can improve performance in your firm, how to motivate individuals, how to motivate employees, and also how to use specific software such as PeopleSoft to get you to a more efficient kind of operation in terms of more of the HR sense element of the business. There's also tech consulting, where as a consultant, you're technical experts in a technology, say for example SAP or Salesforce, and you're going into firms and you're providing them with technical knowledge and insights on how they can adopt a SAP or a new system to improve their business processes. Yeah, so there's a whole range of different consulting out there. It's just what you're interested in. At Adaptivate, we were agile consultants. So essentially we were providing services to client firms who were interested in kind of improving their way of working. Agile is a very hot or like a buzzwordy in the industry at the moment. I would recommend anyone who's listening to this podcast, even if you're not in business, to just have a little look on Google what Agile is, because more likely than not, when you enter industry, you'll hear it. It's just a new way of working. And as Agile consultants, we were helping firms kind of develop a new way to work. That comes along with it a lot of change management and providing solutions on how they can improve their existing processes so that they're doing it in a more efficient manner.
Yeah, I think you definitely said a lot of information there, but yeah, a lot of it like super relevant, super useful. One thing I wanted to ask is, what are the main differences that you found between consulting in a big firm compared to consulting in a smaller firm?
I guess I've only really had a 2-month experience properly consulting in a big firm. They might not be very mature in size at the moment, but I would say when I was consulting or working in a bigger firm, you are working in a firm that has a lot of history and has a lot of know-how. So they know their branding really well. They know the best ways to present strategies. They know the best like kind of solutions for different type of problems. And they also have a lot of access to a lot of different like technical experts when you're kind of developing a solution. So what I mean by that is, say for example, when you're running a workshop and advising a client how to, become more efficient, and you might suggest like, we've identified a problem. So we know that your information systems aren't, up to date, or there's a lot of silos, which is causing a lot of the efficiency problems you have existing today, leading to more costs. You might be able to then pull in another team within your big firm who are technical experts in enterprise solutions specifically, and be like, we have an expert here who can tell you about, solutions you can pursue in order to fix this problem. So I think that's one of the highlights of working in a really big firm. Also, the scale is a lot bigger. You have a lot more colleagues who you rotate with, so you work with a lot more different people. And if you're getting into consulting because you like the dynamics of like having to meet and talk to new people, and you really enjoy like making a lot of like new contacts with other people, then a big firm would be a really good place for you, because it's there's so many diverse people, not only within your home office in Sydney, but also across the globe, who you're able to interact with. So that's a big firm. I think in a smaller firm, especially when I was working at Adaptivate, because we're on the smaller side, there's a lot more flexibility in terms of the way we work, which some people also like a lot more. There's less, I would say, formal rules in place, because in a startup, every employee, it doesn't matter if you're a new like entry-level grad or if you're a senior manager coming in, there's limited resources. So everyone is required to contribute, and your contributions are seen, I guess, more directly by the partners. So that's nice if you like working in a very intimate environment. Smaller firms would be a good pick for you. If there are initiatives or improvements I personally saw which I wanted to kind of address, it was really easy just to grab the partner who's also the co-founder of the firm, because they're sitting right next to me, or even the CFO, and be like, hey, I created a proposal, or like I created like a 2-page PowerPoint, have a look. So yeah, a lot of the times in a smaller firm, when you could see improvements to be made, you could literally just take ownership of it. You would literally be given the okay, and you could just run along with it and complete the task and improve that process.
Yeah, I think when you mentioned the degree of like structure and resources that a big firm has, would you say, I know like that you said you had 2 months experience, but would you say that when you work in a firm of that size, they try to encourage you to specialize in a particular field compared to working in the smaller firm?
I would say no, particularly with strategy consulting. I guess one of the distinctions with like going into technology consulting is that strategy consulting, there's a lot broader of an industry. So like you tend to specialize in industry later down the track. So at the beginning of your career, you get placed on a lot of different projects. For example, you can work on a market sizing project in the financial industry. So that's one project. You can then go and work on a strategy piece for consumer product. And they're very, very different projects, and they require very, very different technical knowledge and skills. So what firms tend to do in consulting, at the beginning of your career, you're kind of a jack of all trades. So they try and get you as much experience on different industries and also different types of projects, so you can identify what you like, what you excel in as well. And then from there you can start requesting, oh, I actually really like working on projects related to real estate. And then they'll put you on more property style projects or projects where the clients are from real estate industry. So you can make that distinction later on. I would say in a big firm with structured learning, it's not that they try and encourage you to specialize in a certain area, but it's just that they know what skills are required at each stage of your career. And because they've been able to trial and error with throughout the years and with all these different types of employees, they have the modules already in place that you're able to just really quickly and easily able to just sign up and complete and develop that skill set on your own.
Yeah, I think especially for students that are looking to either join the big firm or the smaller firm, how did you find the opportunity at Adaptivate?
Yeah, so with Adaptivate, it was a period of time where I was working in a big firm, EY, in tax advisory, and I kind of wanted to challenge myself and experience what working in a different industry or different kind of role would be like. Because as a university student, you're really just trying to figure out where you want to be after you graduate. So I didn't want to kind of box myself in too early. I wanted to experience a lot of different careers or a lot of different industries before coming to final year, where I had to make my final selection. And I happened to have a really good mate of mine. He was working at Adaptivate at that time as a part-time, and he introduced me to the talent lead, who I then interviewed. I went through interview rounds with and managed to secure the role later down the track. But with smaller firms, I do admit that it is a bit harder to find opportunities, especially as university students, because you just never know if they're looking to hire a university student for one, and if they're looking to provide part-time, or if you're able to do part-time with that role. I would recommend personally going on LinkedIn and searching for, entry-level roles. So smaller firms, especially these days, I would say recruitment through LinkedIn is one of their primary avenues of recruiting. And yeah, so on LinkedIn, there's a lot of opportunities. Also, UNSW job board. Employers are posting on UNSW job board. It means that they had the thought there's going to be university students applying who don't really have specific expert knowledge in the role that they're seeking for. And so UNSW job board is also a really good place to be looking at with, smaller firms. I also do know a few mates of mine who have just they really want to get experience in a particular industry, and they've just gone through LinkedIn and basically cold emailed, messaged different talent leads, basically giving them a soft introduction of themselves and asking if they have any roles available, or if they would be interested in having a coffee to have to have a chat about what a career in this firm would be like. And it has been successful for some people. So yeah, definitely LinkedIn would be your number one priority if you're looking for a career in a small firm, and then also UNSW job board.
Alongside the challenge of finding that initial experience, what have been some of the challenges of working in consulting?
I think in business, especially in consulting as well, you do have to be prepared to sometimes work in environments where it's not that comfortable. You're uncomfortable because perhaps the client doesn't see your value and in the work you're delivering, and you really just got to work your best, work your hardest to try and convince the client that the solution you're providing them with is actually a very viable solution to the problem they have. Because a lot of time the clients you're working with, they're experts in the industry, and they bring in a strategy consultant who is not an expert in the industry, hasn't worked 10 years in healthcare, and they're telling you how to do things. Obviously some clients are going to be uncomfortable with the idea, but there's the value you provide in the fact that you haven't worked 10 years in healthcare, but you've done projects in the manufacturing industry, you've done a project in government, you've done a project in consumer products, so you have a lot more of a diverse view on how different firms are operating in different ways. So yeah, I think you do have to be accustomed to embarrassment and like the fact that clients aren't always going to be like your best friend from the get-go.
I guess on a final note, is there any other advice that you have for students looking to pursue like consulting, I guess?
Don't compare yourself to other people's progressions. Everyone has their own pathway to pursuing a career in consulting, and everyone has their own strengths. I think the biggest thing about consulting is that when you're interviewing, the interviewers are looking for what's unique about yourself. They're trying to identify what would make hiring you different from hiring someone who's also done, a commerce degree, has had work experience previously, has been involved in a society. They're looking for what makes you special compared to the person next to you. And what makes you special is what you decide to do throughout university, whether that's, participating in a lot of societies, going after the exact role, or whether it's, going on exchange, or whether it's working, as a manager in a fast food restaurant. That's completely fine. As long as you're able to identify at each stage what your learning experience was and what your takeaway from that experience was, that's what makes you unique, and that's what you should really be striving for. So for those pursuing a career in consulting, don't be intimidated by anyone around you. Don't be intimidated by the fact that you haven't perhaps done many case comps, you haven't won any case comps per se. Just try and figure out if you're interested in a career where you're working with a lot of uncertainty and you're working with a lot of different diverse set of people. If that's what you're interested in, then yeah, just go for it. Like, don't be scared.
Yeah, I think during like recruitment process for like consulting in the firms, they do mention like explicitly that they're open to anyone from like any background, basically, like whatever you study, whether it's like a STEM, like science, like computer science, or like engineering. There is no like limitation if you just like you need to study commerce or anything.
Yeah, what's actually really interesting is that you meet a lot of diverse people in your career as a consultant. For example, you might meet someone who's, been a doctor for 10 years and they suddenly want to work as a consultant who specializes in healthcare. And there's other people who've done an arts degree in say history, and then they become a consultant, and you're working in the same position, but it's just your backgrounds and your experiences growing up are so different, and that's what you can offer. That difference is a really good trait to have.
I think we'll just wrap it up there. Thank you for your time, Karrie. Did you have anything else that you wanted to mention?
Just to all the students listening, hope you guys enjoy and the rest of your degrees, however long you have. Really make the most of being a university student, and once COVID is over, hopefully, you can have the time of your life traveling as well.